In sporting leagues, it often becomes necessary to divide teams into groups in order to properly sort who qualifies for the final rounds. Hockey and basketball have geographical divisions. Football and baseball split into 2 leagues, and the first robotics competition splits teams randomly into 8 divisions at the World Championship. We're here to rewind some of the highlights in division history, covering the addition of divisions in FRC, the multiplication of superdivisions, and the subtraction of what was formerly known as the Curie Curse. We're talking about how divisions bring us together on this episode of First Rewind.
This video on fun was brought to you by viewers like you and also by the following. Discover how you can graduate debt-free at Kettering University with Kettering's amazing co-op employment programs. Those accepted into Kettering University can apply for a robotics scholarship, providing up to an additional $5,000 a year in tuition assistance. Head on over to kettering.edu/first to learn more, schedule a visit, or apply. Fun is continuing to grow and looking for new ad partners for the 2024 season. If your organization has a positive message to spread to our over 250,000 unique viewers, go to firstupdatesnow.com/contact to get more information.
Hi, I'm Ari. I'm your guide through history. I'm the strategy and design mentor on 8085, and I'm a division previewer here on Fun. I'm joined by James and Rylee. James, why don't you give us a little introduction?
I'm James. I'm an alumni of Team 1523 and mentor of Team 179. I'm basically similar to Ari. I handle the strategy and scouting parts of my team.
Hi, my name is Rylee. I am the head coach for 3481 Wrongbots and an alumni of the program. And in the past, I've handled all of the strategy, awards, business, marketing, and mechanics.
So let's talk about championships pre-2015. We're talking 4 divisions, alliances of 3, maybe 4 robots. What was it like with only 4 divisions?
So my first championships was in 2007. There was only 4 divisions, the original 4 still back then. And even back then when there wasn't 100 teams, and I think that even my first one, there was only 60-something teams per division. We weren't even at 75 yet. It still felt huge. Just like the full scale of that many teams just being together as a student was awe-inspiring. And we were in the Georgia Dome at the time, so we were still playing in big NFL stadiums with all the pomp and circumstances. And you had all the flags over Einstein. Most of those flags were because of FLL, but we won't talk about that too much. But it was just the show and the pomp was so cool. And then just the feeling of being with the best of the best, getting to see those teams that, especially back then, there wasn't great video of, show their stuff.
My first championship was in 2015. So I was around when divisions at Worlds were around. But I mean, going back, I've watched videos of, what champs back when it was hosted in Epcot Center at Disney and in Atlanta. But I can agree that like the just the sheer magnitude of the competition in St. Louis at my first World Championships was crazy. It just felt, it was incredible. You could feel the GP circulating around you. It was like everyone there was nice. Everyone was excited. That was back when paper airplanes at Worlds were a thing, which was super fun. And, chucking them, which was kind of weird to see in FTC this year, bringing back paper airplanes. But it was really cool. It just feels so different than Worlds does these days with the like horizontal layout because you're playing in a big dome setting.
I have not thought about paper airplanes in years. Yes, people used to throw paper airplanes onto the Einstein field, and it was bad. I think one thing from 2014 and back is that it was really difficult to make elimination rounds. There were only 3 teams on an alliance. There were 4 divisions. So, you do the math, 24 teams from a division make the elimination rounds. So you had really, really great teams making eliminations. I think 2013 is a great example of that. You had really skilled teams up until your first seed alliance, 3 teams. So 2014 comes around and they start using 4-team alliances. You can pick your backup robot, and that made it much more exciting. There were no more, oh no, we're going to have to pull in our backup robot and it might not be as good of an alliance, but just fascinating to watch some of those old matches with quite a high caliber of elimination rounds. In the year 2000, the first Robotics World Championship hosted 249 teams, all playing on the same field. After close to 500 qualification matches, 16 alliances of 3 teams were formed to compete for the title of the world champion. This was not the ideal way to run an event. The second largest FRC competition in 2000 hosted 65 teams, with most hosting around 30. Something had to change. The next season, in 2001, first unveiled 4 randomized divisions that teams would be sorted into for qualification rankings, and 5 fields that they'd rotate across to play qualification matches. The 2001 championship hosted 335 teams, the most of any event in FIRST history. These divisions, Archimedes, Curie, Galileo, and Newton, followed by the final face-off field of Einstein, would remain the structure for the championship event through to the present, representing over 20 years of competition. The transition to divisions from the 2000 to 2001 seasons was not without complaints. Teams were disappointed that they would not be able to play with all the teams that attended championships, but those arguments were soon dissuaded by the quality of competition. This would be a common thread across all changes to the championships in the coming future. Around the same time divisions were introduced, more changes to how teams qualified for championships were implemented. Prior to this, the only qualifier for attending champs was attending one regional and wanting to go to champs. Everyone that made it wanted to go. FIRST has always aimed for 25% attendance, or qualifying once every 4 years. Qualifying methods in the next few years included even-odd team numbers in even-odd years and a point-based system, but ultimately ended on what it is today with regional wins, Impact Award, Engineering Inspiration, Rookie All-Star, Legacy Hall of Fame random draw, district rank, or waitlist based on longer time means more chances. With 24 years of divisions, in retrospect of the 2000 split, does having divisions add to the championship experience? Like, is it all right that you guys don't play on the same field as every team at Worlds?
I personally am a huge fan of the division structure. I think that it adds a lot of, just the competitive level. You're competing with a smaller group of teams. When you get to those really, really huge divisions and really, really huge events, it starts to just feel overwhelming. Think about just like scouting 100+ teams. Yeah. I also want to throw out my team is a district model team. So we compete at the First in Texas Championship, which is 2 districts. And a conversation that I had with my students last year, they were looking at their schedule and, they're 60 team divisions, and they're looking at it and they're like, we play the same teams over and over again. And I said, well, that's kind of how that works, because even in a huge structure, even in a huge event, when you have to break up the gaps so that teams have a several match turnaround, you're going to end up playing the same several teams, and you might not see every single team in a division. So when you get to those massive, massive divisions, you're not going to see every team. And so by breaking it down into smaller divisions and smaller groups, you actually get to compete more with more different teams and see more than you necessarily would.
I am also a big fan of the division split. It's one of the things that I think the regional model is rightfully switching away from. The big old super regionals, the 64 team regionals, have become much less common than smaller 30-40 team regionals for the same reasons. When you're at this big event, especially back when we only used to have 5 or 7 matches sometimes to decide your top 8, the schedule determined a lot. Who you played with determined a lot. If it really came down to it, I think all of us can say if you had 2 teams that the scouting said were equal and you played with one of them and it went really well and you didn't play with the other, you're going to give that edge to the team you played with because you've already played with them. It's a known factor. And by making the divisions smaller and making them more plentiful, it allows for you to have more interactions with those teams, whether with or against, and it also allows for more teams to actually show up. I was not the hugest fan of the changes to regional qualifying last year, where the third robot wasn't allowed to go from a winning alliance, and I'm glad that got changed this year because it's an alliance. Just because you were picked first or second shouldn't be a factor.
Absolutely agree with that. I think one of the things that I like about this is that you really still don't even play with every team, even if they all played on the same field. There's way too many teams for that to happen. But smaller events being on one field versus having to play, what was it, 249 teams, that's a much better event experience for the teams. And keeping your champs experience as a large event is also fantastic. I definitely prefer the 800 teams, 600 teams, 8 field Houston experience, what we had this year, versus, say, 2 400 team events and playing at one very, very, very tiny, playing those two alliances that won both of those events at the Festival of Champions. I think that 2017 is a very niche thing that happened, and I can see why it never happened again. Just the more people that you can have at an event like championships, the better.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Rewind. If so, make sure you click that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up to help the algorithm. We'd like to thank this show sponsor, Kettering University, for their support of First Updates Now. Over 30% of high school students who attend Kettering University were in robotics. And if you'd like to go to a university that supports you being in robotics and their incredible programs, head on over to kettering.edu/first to learn more about what Kettering can do for you, including their amazing co-op programs to help you graduate debt-free.
With fully randomized divisions, it would make sense that each division would have around 3 championship wins by 2014. But of course, data is never that nice. The Curie division did not have a single win since its inception in 2001 until the 2014 season, when teams 254, 469, 2848, and 74 defeated Newton to declare #and the curse goes poof. There have been a few changes to how the division system works, most notably in recent years. The next change to divisions and to the championship itself would come in 2015, when 4 more divisions were introduced: Carson, Carver, Hopper, and Tesla. This allowed 600 teams versus the previous cap at 400 at a more operable 75 teams per division. The FRC program was undergoing a change in how the championship event operated. There were more teams than ever participating in the program, and the regional model qualified a specific number of teams. The scalability of the program was growing faster than the championship could keep up. The end result was that the 2017 through 2019 seasons, FRC championships were split into North and South, 400 teams attending each. Teams were quite vocal with their complaints, not having a true champion alliance, not being able to see teams from across the globe, discrepancies in competition. It was not a popular solution. The disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic led to the current state of our championship. In 2022, the championship became a single event with 6 divisions and 500 teams. This past year, in 2023, Champs hosted 8 divisions with around 600 teams. Divisions are still created by a mostly random sort. All rookies are sorted first, then each division is populated with the rest of its attendees. The random sort often creates lopsided divisions, unable to account for event strength and competitive balance. So let's talk about super divisions. We're talking divisions where the OPR is far above the average across all divisions. Your divisions like 2023 Archimedes, 2019 Curie, Carson 2017, Newton 2016. There seems to be one every few seasons. So are they a feature of the system or are they a bug?
So the first thing that I want to throw out there, and something that I didn't realize before today, is that most of those super divisions actually don't end up winning. They compete really well, but they don't end up winning worlds. And I think a lot of the reason for that is that divisions kind of fall one of 2 ways. They fall where they have the super good, eye-catching, the teams that won their district or their regionals, and then a lot of the teams that barely qualified or qualified on wildcard. And then some other divisions have a very deep bench, and they're all good teams because you have to be good to qualify for worlds, but it's not the best teams. And so what we saw is teams like, Cheesy Poofs this year, who partnered up and then made mistakes in their division because their division was so good, and didn't end up actually even qualifying for the Einstein field, if I remember correctly. Because, you have a deep bench or you have those crazy, overqualified teams.
I actually really like the Newton example you brought up from 2016. When those divisions were announced, everyone was just so shocked at everybody who was shoved into that division. 118, 16, 254, 1241. The list goes on and on and on. And my team was in there as well. And we had the popularity of being that weak 0.5 winner. So everyone got to watch us. And it was such a weird experience to be in that division and just watch the games play out, because those teams also have when you're popular, teams know you. They're like, oh, I want to make a name for myself, I'm going to play defense on 118. I want to make a name for myself, I don't like 254 is going to remember my number, and when it comes time to pick, they're going to want me, because if they don't pick me, I'm going to beat them up. And so you face steeper competition from that popularity. So a lot of the times you'll see stuff like was brought up with 254 this year, where while they didn't suffer the mechanical issues, the tougher game being played on these popular teams can lead to them having those issues in elims. In Newton, for example, 16 had an amazing early game where they scored 12 boulders by themselves. And if you've ever watched that game, doing 12 game pieces was insane. And then from then on, 3, 4, 4, 3, switching over to low goals because they were just never left alone again. And you'll see when divisions like that play out, sometimes you'll see somebody who is good, should be in elims, but maybe shouldn't be the third alliance captain. Maybe they should be the sixth. And it'll play with some of those super pairings that you would expect to see.
Yeah, Bronkbots was also in Newton in 2016, and I remember watching my team get picked as the third pick for the third alliance, and just looking at all of the other pairings was crazy, because every single team that ended up in elims was just nuts. And then it's crazy that one or two little mistakes can really change the whole game there. Bronkbots' drivetrain had some issues during quarterfinals, so we got pulled and swapped with Texas Torque, who's one of our alliance partners. And that actually cost our whole division the advancement. So it was those little mistakes in these crazy super divisions that make it or break it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because of the amount of talent in these, it becomes less of, all right, so we need to get the max score possible, and more of, we need to consistently be getting somewhere close to our max score. It doesn't even have to be our max score. It just has to be consistent, because the moment another alliance messes up, it's your chance to shine, because everyone is performing at that level. So when you look at these divisions, it seems that the number one seed, the high seeds, really never win the division, which is really interesting to look at, because you have such a high end, but then you have the rest of the division that tapers off. So you have your very low seeds, like your 6, your 4, your 7, teams that are going to get those high tier teams in the second round as well, and not just in the first, that end up winning these. So they're won by the alliances that are most consistent. I think another benefit to these sort of super divisions is that qual matches get really fun. Like, we had an alliance this year in Archimedes that was 254, 6328, and 972. 2 of those won the division, and one of them was the number 1 seed. So just absolutely fun to have your randomized qual schedule and go through and look at, oh my god, we're playing with 118, you know? Divisions in FRC are synonymous with how the program is run. As the championship continues to progress year to year, it'll be accompanied by some of the biggest names in science, guiding us on to Einstein. But until then, thanks Rylee and James for the history, and thank you for the rewind. Make sure you subscribe to Fun's YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the show, give us a like and let us know in the comments your thoughts or any topics you want to see covered. Next time on Rewind.
This video on Fun was brought to you by viewers like you, and also by the following. Discover how you can graduate debt-free at Kettering University with Kettering's amazing co-op employment programs. Those accepted into Kettering University can apply for a robotics scholarship, providing up to an additional $5,000 a year in tuition assistance. Head on over to kettering.edu/first to learn more, schedule a visit, or apply. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Most live shows can be found on the First Updates Now YouTube channel, live competitions at twitch.tv/firstupdatesnow, and join our Discord at discord.gg/firstupdatesnow. Check our other social offerings on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.